Following the Andrew Gwynne resignation, Lewis Goodall, who is somebody I admire and we have friends in common, and he dealt with the issue on LBC and how people, he claimed, alter their speech in different settings. And this has provoked some controversy, particularly in my comments section, and particularly in relation to Andrew Gwynne's comments in the so-called Trigger Me Timbers WhatsApp group. And Lewis Goodall's exchange with Shadow Cabinet Minister Alex Burkhart raised a crucial question. Why do Conservatives assume that they would be above such behaviour? This assumption reflects a deeper belief that certain political groups are inherently more disciplined, measured, or morally superior in their use of language or in their discretion. But history and recent events show that this simply isn't the case. It's just they haven't been caught. And the real problem is, I think, as Lewis Goodall quite rightly points out, a general decay in the language and the and the actions in Parliament by parliamentarians, and that I think is the is a fundamental problem, and I think it's disturbing. F1T4 Life says, I was listening to Lewis Goodall today on LBC, and it was so annoying seeing him defending this. Oh, wait, according to him, he wasn't defending or excusing it, but kept saying that people act and speak differently depending on who they are talking to. And for sure, you don't talk to like Group A like you do with Group B or C or D, etc., etc. But why are you saying anything anywhere to any group, things that are racist, homophobic, transphobic, anti-Semitic, wishing death to your constituency? To your constituents, who seriously jokes about such things? If someone is trying to dismiss this the way Lewis and his guests did, it just makes me scared of the stuff they talk about that they want to hide from us. It's really changed how I saw that man today, for the worst. And meanwhile, Ashley Dalton, the Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister for the Department of Health, replacing Alex Gwynne. But I think this comment by the person who's sort of become a series of acronyms and digits is perfectly reasonable, and I think Lewis Goodall didn't make himself as clear as he could have done. Goodall is correct to highlight that people modify their tone depending on their audience. It's not inherently sinister. We all do it. The way one speaks to a close friend over a pint, if you're Mr. Farage, differs from how one presents to a parliamentary committee. The ability to navigate different social contexts is not hypocrisy, it's a basic function of communication. However, what matters is not just the shift in tone, but the content of what's being said. And I think the commentator is quite right that there are some things which shouldn't even pass the lips. The backlash against Goodall, encapsulated by that YouTube comment, suggests that his attempt to explain this phenomenon was perceived as excusing the inexcusable. It's one thing to adjust for formality or social setting, but it's quite another to descend into racism, misogyny, homophobia, and the outright dehumanization of one's own constituents. There's a vast moral chasm between private jokes about an MP's debating style and expressing the hope that a 72-year-old constituent croaks it before the next election. Budget's reaction to Goodall's framing is revealing. The assumption that the Conservatives are above such behaviour is at best ahistorical. From Boris Johnson's letterboxes and piccaninnies to Suella Braverman's inflammatory rhetoric about asylum seekers and Albanians, the Conservative Party has not exactly, if you don't remember, it was invader. The Conservative Party has not exactly been a bastion of linguistic restraint. And the reality is that political parties are made up of people, and people, regardless of ideology, are capable of appalling lapses in judgment, particularly if that's what they see around them. And I'm afraid the environment of Westminster encourages such lapses. And that is the problem. The environment of Westminster, this this deeply macho environment, deeply competitive environment, is not germane to civilized conversation. And I've come to that conclusion reluctantly. The idea that the right is inherently more disciplined in its speech persists. This is partly due to the presentation of professionalism. Conservative politicians often couch controversial views in carefully polished language, but Labour MPs, by contrast, sometimes fall into the trap of casual crassness, as seen in the Trigamy Timbers scandal. But polishing a sentiment doesn't make it less offensive. A slur in a WhatsApp group is disgraceful, but a Prime Minister describing Muslim women as looking like letterboxes as in a national newspaper is arguably just as damaging. The outcry against Goodall's discussion reflects a broader anxiety about normalising toxic language. And while it's true that people speak differently in different contexts, it's also true that some things should not be said at all. And racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, homophobia are not casual banter. They reveal deeper biases. And when such comments are made in a private group, the issue isn't just the lack of decorum, but the underlying worldview they expose and endorse and empower. And Andrew Gwynne's apology underscores the performative nature of political control. I deeply regret my badly misjudged comments and apologise for any offence I've caused is the political equivalent of I'm sorry you feel that way. It's not an apology. It's another insult. This is not genuine accountability. It's damage control. His removal from the government was swift, but it remains to be seen if this will translate into a genuine shift in political culture or simply another round of superficial purges. What should happen is the Parliament as a whole should vote to ban these people. There are failings in public life that simply should merit exile from public life. Full stop. And if the Conservatives and the Labour Party and the Lib Dems and Reform can't get together and agree to that, then I'm afraid they are endorsing this fecal culture. Goodall's discussion, while well-intentioned, was always going to attract backlash because it came in the wake of a scandal where the key issue was not just how people speak differently in different settings, but what they choose to say at all. And people are wary of any commentary that appears to soften or contextualize hate speech, even if that is not the intention. The media, particularly political journalists, walk a fine line between explaining phenomena and appearing to excuse them. And the issue is not that politicians have different modes of speaking for different audiences. They do. That's human nature. The issue is what is acceptable in any setting. And a private conversation should not be a free pass for bigotry. And the assumption that Conservatives would never engage in such behaviour is frankly laughable given their own track record. And instead of focusing on where things are said, we should be focusing on why they are said. Language reflects values, and if your private speech shows contempt for those who you claim to represent, you shouldn't be in public office, regardless of any party affiliation. Somebody who uses this sort of language is not so different from somebody who punches their constituents. And we've had examples of both of those experiences, haven't we? So, and I don't think this is an exclusively Labour problem. I don't think it's a problem that's exclusive to Labour. I think it is a problem which is whipped up in the hothouse of Westminster, and Westminster should deal with it. This is a Westminster problem. And I think the bullying continues. The bullying is another aspect which should be sorted out across civil services and across councils. The bullying and the lying and the assumption that because you're on the end of a telephone you can get away with whatever you say because you've not really given your name. And anyway, your word against the constituent. Who's going to believe a constituent? This attitude needs to change.